Hey everybody, I'm ZeldaMaster, and in this video I have a short Breath of the Wild discussion slash theory. Now this goes over some of the information we got from Game Informer's newest issue, which covers one of the game's dungeons as well as its boss. So spoiler alert to those who don't want to be spoiled about the game, but I will be going over some of that because with this information we got from Game Informer, I believe we can theorize how the rest of the dungeons are going to be within the game. And I went over that in the Game Informer information video that I uploaded but a couple days ago when the newest issue came out. Now I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't seen it yet. But anyways, to get on with this video, pretty much my idea is that each of the dungeons will be each of the four giant colossal like beasts that we see within the game, because as we know, and pretty much as we know in Breath of the Wild story and the 100 years prior, that when Link failed, at least this is the theory, Link failed of course, and then the Sheikah deployed obviously its guardians as well as the four divine beasts that were able to, you know, seal Calamity Ganon within Hyrule Castle. And then from there on, we don't really know what happened to these divine beasts, but as we've seen in trailers, we've seen them both in blue, you know, representing the Sheikah aura, and we've seen them in red representing the evil Calamity Ganon aura that we know, and we even seen the guardians go that certain red, indicating that they're evil. So clearly Calamity Ganon might have taken over these Sheikah giant beasts. These colossal like beasts must be taken over by Calamity Ganon, similar to how the guardians are, because they're still mechanical, and somehow, some way Calamity Ganon is able to take control and yeah, pretty much overwrite whatever like authorization the Sheikah have over it. And my idea here is that Link must head to each of these colossal like beasts and enter them and take on the dungeon with inside them, and by doing so he'll be able to restore them to the Sheikah and you know, pretty much remove the Calamity Ganon curse from them. And the reason why I got this idea, because it may seem a little far-fetched, but the idea is the fact that, I mean, it's kind of obvious, because what we know so far about these dungeons and what Game Informer has told us is that the dungeon is constantly moving, and from what we know, the idea is that yes, these are the divine beasts, and we've seen them moving as well. So maybe while you're inside the beast, the dungeon itself, it will be moving along, you know, with Link taking on the dungeon, which is gonna be really weird to, like, you know, enter and try to do all of that. It seems very interesting in concept, but yes, I believe that that could be the idea, and that is why the dungeons are constantly moving, because the guardian itself, or the giant divine beast itself, is constantly moving. And if you couldn't tell, inside these dungeons, or at least inside the dungeon we were able to take a look at, it looks a lot like the Sheikah shrines. But this time, you know, it's not necessarily designed similar to what's inside the Sheikah shrines, but it has similar Sheikah-like creations. Like, it looks Sheikah built, similar to the Sheikah towers and all other Sheikah creations. So clearly this could be built by the Sheikah, and we've already, you know, theorized, and we already know that the Sheikah did build the divine beasts. So if these dungeons are the divine beasts, then yes, they were built by the Sheikah, and they already look to be built by the Sheikah. So that's another thing that may indicate that it could be the divine beast. And on top of that, I believe something that I feel like kind of gave it away is we do see screenshots of Link inside the dungeon, but at the very end we get to see a glimpse of the boss, which is known as Wind Blight Ganon. And what we see is Link is somewhere in the sky, like he is atop the dungeon. And yes, it looks like pretty much he is very high up in the sky, and it reminds me of one of the divine beasts, which is the bird. Yes, we've seen the quote-unquote city in the sky at first, and now we know it's actually a giant mechanical bird that was one of the four giants, and that could be the dungeon. Maybe Link was lifted up into the dungeon and had to take it on, and at the very end he reached the very top and had to defeat whatever was controlling the whole Sheikah bird dungeon thing, which was Wind Blight Ganon. Because yes, we know Calamity Ganon has taken over, and maybe the way to restore all of the four divine beasts is by to defeat whatever is on the dungeon and complete it. And maybe Windblight Ganon could be like a part of Calamity Ganon that is controlling the Divine Beast, which is the bird as we know it. And then we'll pretty much take on every other beast, you know, the other 3 beasts, with them being different animals as we've seen, and them having different bosses, and they could be different elements of the Blight Ganon, because we know Wind Blight Ganon up in the wind, you know, on a bird, so that could maybe have, like, for the other ones, there could be like a Fire Blight Ganon, in whatever type of element for whatever fits that scenario, for each dungeon. So I believe that could be a theory, or it could just be Windblight Ganon for the first like dungeon boss or one of the early dungeon bosses that we take on, because you could take on any dungeon within any order, so it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't really indicate that this is the first dungeon. But it reminds me of, you know, what could Phantom Ganon be like, because we've seen Phantom Ganon as the Forest Temple boss with the Ocarina of Time, so maybe Windblight Ganon is just a weak form of Ganon that fights you, and you fight it very early on within the game. That way you get a taste of Ganon early on, and then later on, if you decide to complete everything else and then reach Calamity Ganon, because you can reach Calamity Ganon immediately, but if you decide to take your time, then you had a small battle against Windblight Ganon, and then you have the big battle against Calamity Ganon. Or it could just mean that there are 3 other Blight Ganons with different elements. That's just a theory that I'm kind of throwing out, but yes, it would make sense for there to be only 4 dungeons, because we know the game has 120 shrines, so there's already a lot of content. And at first we thought there weren't going to be dungeons and they were only going to have shrines, but it seems that we are getting dungeons, because we've seen a full-fledged dungeon and it looks nothing like a shrine. So yeah, with the idea, I feel like 4 would be a good amount. I mean, we've seen in Majora's Mask, which was a game full of side quests, similar to Breath of the Wild, you could say, and it only had 4 dungeons, so maybe Nintendo is taking similar things to that, and as well as the 4 giants. I mean, that kind of referenced Majora's Mask as well, and it may seem that I'm taking a lot of inspiration from it, but I'm not. Honestly, from what we've seen so far with the 4 giants moving, how they look like they could have like structure inside of them, and for Link to enter them, it would make a lot of sense. And we even see at one point Rebel, which is the Rito tribe's birdman that we see him fly up to one of these divine beasts, which is the bird one that I'm theorizing that is the one that carries Windblight Ganon, and the one that we've seen so far. So maybe Link is taken up to that bird mechanism thing by the Sheikah, one of the divine beasts, by Rebel. Like, Rebel takes Link and flies up, and maybe Rebel is one of the 4 companions that takes you to one of the 4 dungeons, because as we do know from the Famitsu scans, they did say that the Goron, the Zora, and the Rito, which is Rebel, Mipha, as well as whatever the Goron's name, I keep forgetting his name, but those 3 are, you know, fleshed out characters. They all have the champion scarf on them, and they will serve to help out Link in some sort of way. At least in the Famitsu scans, they said that they will be Link's companion sometime throughout the adventure, so clearly we know that they're gonna help us, and each one of them are holding different weapons that look very unique and stand out. Now, this is a far-fetched theory. Now, pretty much my theory here is that maybe these 3, as well as the Gerudo girl that we've seen, could all be your companions, and each one of them takes you to one of the temples, as we see Link standing by the Gerudo girl, staring at what could be one of the colossal like beasts, like one of the divine beasts resting, and Link must enter it, and maybe then it will get up. And we've seen like a colossal like beast walking in the sand, so that could be the exact same one. But my point is that yes, maybe each one of these characters takes you to one of the temples, and they help you get inside it in some sort of way, and then from there on out, once you complete the temple, maybe you get their item, or you get some sort of reward, because clearly we're going to want something from completing the dungeons. I mean, you can beat the game without completing the dungeons, but I would only assume Nintendo would reward us with something special, and my idea here is, and like I said, this is kind of a far out one, because Nintendo did say that pretty much every item within the game will break. Like, out of all of the items Link gets, all your weapons are bound to break. And as for the Master Sword, they said it's a secret. So we don't really know if the Master Sword will break, but my theory is it won't. I just think Nintendo doesn't want to tell us that. But when you think about it, every single item will break. That is pretty ridiculous, and it doesn't really seem like something to look forward to. Like, at the very end of the game, you may have some really cool looking items, and then you're afraid that they might break if you use them too much. And that would suck a lot, like, especially really rare items. If they can all break, that's not something to look forward to be honest. But if maybe Nintendo had the Master Sword obviously be indestructible, and then from every single dungeon you complete, you get like a specific item from them, maybe from the 4 companions, which we do see the Rito tribesman, Rebel rather, is his name. We see him with a giant, awesome looking bow, and maybe that bow is completely indestructible, and by completing the dungeon and maybe helping his tribe, he will give you his bow, or something beyond that, because as we know, there is no item within the dungeon. So yeah, it's not like Link is going to get some sort of item within the dungeon, and Link can easily pick up all sorts of items from the overworld, and it seems like Link doesn't need specific items to get from one point to another. Like, we don't need a hook shot from, you know, one side of the bridge to the other. The dude can climb. The dude has many different ways to figure out how to get from one place to another. You know, you got the glider. There's just a lot of things within this game. Link is not like restricted as he was in many other Zelda games. So when you really think about it, all of these items could be obsolete. Like, you don't need a hook shot. You don't need whatever else, like, you know, the spinner from Twilight Princess. That'd be really weird. Like, we could jump on our shield now and use that as a skateboard, or essentially, or a snowboard, or whatever it may be. So, you know, Link has a lot of pretty much different ways to play the game, and overall it doesn't seem that we need specific items. And if the game allows you to beat Calamity Ganon straight up without taking the dungeons on, then clearly I don't think there's going to be any key items within this game. I think every item you get, you can use, and you can use any item for any scenario. But what I do believe is at the very end, if you do complete all 4 dungeons, maybe you'll get like a bow, like an indestructible, amazing, super strong bow, and a super strong hammer, and a super strong spear, each from, you know, the respective character, the Goron, the Zora, the Rito, and then whatever else the Gerudo has to give you. Maybe you'll get whatever item she'll give you, and it'll also be indestructible. And along with those items, you'll have the Master Sword, and maybe the Hylian Shield, and those will be, like, you know, the final 6 items that can never break at all. Now, like I said, this is kind of a far out theory, but wouldn't that be nice to be at the end of the game, to have like all of Link's main items be indestructible and have them look really awesome and super upgraded compared to every other item? I think that'd be really nice, and I think it'd be interesting to see every character give you their item, because we see him hold it. Maybe they'll be using it in some scenario. I mean, we see every character that Link's with, like these 3 companions, and I believe the Gerudo girl as well. We see every scene that Link is in, he doesn't have the Sheikah Slate on him, so it's a high chance that all of these scenes are taken in the past. I mean, we also see Link with the Master Sword, so that also may lead to it being in the past as well. But I feel like if Link does re-meet them, and clearly they're going to be in the game. I mean, they have the champion scarf, so it indicates something. We see them with their items. I believe we're not just going to see them in cutscenes. So even though, yeah, Link doesn't have the Sheikah Slate when he meets them, maybe he'll meet them later on within the game with the Sheikah Slate, and they will take Link to the respective dungeons and give them their items when completed, or something like that. And overall, that is just my theory on how the dungeons will be, like all 4 of them. And it would be cool to have like each tribe help you get to each dungeon, and each one of these dungeons be one of the divine beasts. Like, that sounds really crazy. And overall, even though this is just a theory, this is kind of something I really want to see within the game. Like, it's not something I'm just speculating, something I hope that makes its way in the game. Like, I really hope I'm right, because that would be a really cool, like, way to take on the game and overall see the dungeons in. So overall, let me know what you guys think of pretty much everything mentioned in this video, and yeah, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to think about this and what your speculations are for the dungeons. Overall, this is kind of like a discussion video, so your comments are important, so make sure to let me know what you guys think of everything mentioned in this video and overall your theories for them. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I've been ZeldaMaster. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about in another video. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!